I think it's about halfway in between something that's going to do us in 50 years or something that's going to do us in 15 years. But the problem is that it's this acceleration effect that we've already got more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than will cause a 2-degree warming. And the reason why the 2-degree figure was pulled out of the air to some extent, as there had to be some temperature rise that was regarded as acceptable and some value that was regarded as unacceptable. And so to some extent this was a political figure, but it also there was a reality behind it, in that if you warm the climate by more than 2 degrees, there's a lot of crops which start to give very much lower yields and wither away. So there'll be a real crisis in global food production if we warm up beyond 2 degrees, and a lot of other effects as well. And the rate of sea level rise will increase very fast. But the trouble is, we already have enough carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to take us beyond 2 degrees. It's because the warming is not instantly realized. It takes years for that extra carbon dioxide to exert its effect through the climate system. But even if we never emit any more, we'll get our 2 degrees of warming and all the consequences from it. So we're on there's a kind of flywheel or ratchet which is driving us on, and I think the fear of the people who are very pessimistic about our future is that if we don't really do something very, very serious to stop things, that's what will happen. And you can see a timetable at which various irreversible effects will have happened, and it's the business as usual scenario which the Intergovernmental Panel stopped using because it sounded too bad. But in fact, it's in their scenarios of how the future will go. They have an optimistic one when we become sane and rational and stop emitting carbon dioxide. There's a business as usual one, and then there's a let's let rip on everything scenario, a sort of Donald Trump type scenario. So their early assessments of what's happening to the planet had 3 scenarios, and then they thought that was too easy. People would understand that and might get really worried, so they deliberately complicated things later. But on the business as usual scenario, which is the one that we're following, which is we're not the rate of rise of CO2 and other gases is as if we weren't doing anything to stop it. It's just letting it go its own way. But on that scenario, you can plot out at which year we reach certain numbers of degrees of warming, and at the moment it's having us get about 4 to 5 degrees of warming by the end of the century, which it may not wipe us out as a species, as the most pessimistic people would say, but it would wipe us out as a civilized species. We would be at 4 to 5 degrees of warming. The large areas of the planet would become very uninhabitable. There would be deserts where the present, a lot of southern Europe would become a desert. And you can see how the human race would have a great deal of difficulty in surviving as a functioning organism in that time, and that's the end of the century, and bad things would be happening way before that. So probably we are talking about, say, 20 years before we have such serious consequences that we really notice, and because we're really noticing this year from various disasters.